Well, there we go. Apparently we're live. So, and we have Austin joining us just in the nick of time. There we go. Cool. So hopefully we're live. Hopefully people have linked in. If you can hear us, let us know. This is all new to all of us. Hopefully we're working. So yeah, kia ora, welcome to B Corp is Better Business, ? Live panel event with some awesome, amazing humans from various different B corporations, all theoretically Kiwi, apart from Steve, who's in America, but we won't hold that against him. So really, I guess the aim behind what I'm trying to do here is introduce the idea, the topic of B corporations to more people in New Zealand. We've got quite a few of them already. I think we're at 46 now. I keep losing count because we keep getting more and more every day. But also really just to get under the hood a little bit of what B corporations are, why some of these amazing organizations chose to go down that route, what have they got out of being a B corporation, and maybe what the future of B corporation in New Zealand looks like. So yeah, I guess it was always going to be my intention to pick on Steve first, because Steve, it is genuinely all your fault that any of us here are B corporations in New Zealand, because you were the first B corporation to certify in New Zealand. And what year was that?
It was 2012, I believe. I get confused. It's an age thing. I get confused, but it's also been an America thing, I think, been a day behind. But I don't think I can take the blame for the B Corps. I think you can yourself. You've championed the thing. We sort of were first for various reasons, which I can go into. But if I do, then no one else here will have anything to say because therell be no time. But it was just one of those things we did. But yeah, it's been a long time, and I think we've recertified for the third time last year, which was really tough, to be honest. We're in a difficult industry to be a B Corp, but we managed to get through each time, and luckily it's now 3 years, which helps us.
Yeah. So what was it though that made you? I mean, it wasn't even a thing, for you to sort of find this thing or have connected to this idea of B corporations. Like, what was it that drove you to certify and be the first in New Zealand?
Well, it's interesting. And Amy's Fine Foods, which is a customer of ours over here, has just become a B Corp, and they were a B Corp the day they started, but they just weren't certified. So I like to think we were reasonably similar. We ran the business in that way. We wanted to empower people to have wonderful lives, and even selling disposable gloves, you can still, be excited about what you do. And we are literally on a mission to save the world one glove at a time. Hence, we're in the States, been here 5 years, and we're making really good progress here on saving the US, particularly the food system over here, one glove at a time, and it needs it. They need somebody like us in our business. But so that's how we started. Linda and I started the business, and then in 2006, and I was traveling to Europe via the States, and one time I stopped in at San Francisco and discovered a company called Method, who do detergents and dishwashing, and loved their business because they, like us, are in a very boring business, and they turned it around into a bit of a designer, saying they were a few years ago, bought out by Ekava, which is a European, I think, B Corp as well. But they've done some wonderful stuff, and through that I found the San Francisco office of B Lab at the time and met up with them. This was probably in 2011. And I just liked the whole idea of it and thought it would be interesting to go through the process. And I have to say they were incredibly patient. We were talking with them from all around the world, and at that stage the impact assessment was very American orientated, and there were all sorts of things that didn't really fit with New Zealand, but we took us about a year, but we eventually got through, and it was just really nice. And then no one noticed, of course, except us, and no one even knew what it was. I think we were the third in Australasia, and about just under 200, or maybe around 200 around the world at that stage. And it was pretty cool. And the only person who actually noticed was a guy called Tim Jones, who came knocking on our door soon after and said, "Damn, I thought I was going to be the first B Corp in New Zealand," and that's where it sort of all started. So it's been an interesting and rewarding experience. We tell people we are no way a social enterprise. We sell products for profit, unashamedly. It's how we do that and what we do with the profit that's the difference. Our business is built around a profit centre, not around a social goal as such. But we are saving, we know, for example, we're saving hundreds of thousands of pounds, to use the American lingo, of waste every year just by helping people with their process. We're keeping factories safe for workers in Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, and China. So all these sort of things are a byproduct of running a business that is run under the B Corp sort of philosophy.
Nice. And how about you, Tesh? Because Tesh, you're, I think, maybe B Corp number 42, 43. I've suggested to B Lab regionally that kind of like the All Blacks, when you get your test cap, you get given a T-shirt with, B Corp number 42 or whatever, so that we all know, who's who and what's what. But you're one of the newer B corporations. So what was it about the movement, or that made you want to be a part of it and go through the certification?
So we got our certification through start of the year in end of Jan, and that was after working towards it for the last nearly 2 years, a good year and a half. And it was quite a process. It was something that I'd heard about and was familiar with, and I'd sort of recognized other brands that I really admire who were B Corps, and thought, we want to become one of those. But I didn't realize how much was involved. The process was a lot more intense and detailed and thorough than I think I could have imagined. And that was great. We learned heaps going through the process. We came across all these things that we should have already had in place and needed to put in place. And so now we have those all sorted. So it was almost like a business coaching tool at the same time, I found it really educational. I really enjoyed everything that we learned out of it. And then it felt truly satisfying when we did get our certification, because we've gone through other certification processes and this was by far the most intense.
That's really, I think that's true reflection. I don't think anyone relishes going through the assessment, although obviously we're trying to coax more people to want to be a B corporation. But I think that is the validity of the assessment, is that it's not just, hey, take my money, we'll put a stamp on our business, and we can claim now that we're doing some good. And I think Steve's alluded to it being, how is it you refer to yourselves again, like the cleanest, dirtiest business in the world, or something along those lines? That was a great tagline you had. But I can't
We just call ourselves the dirtiest B Corp in the world, but with the biggest opportunity, because we're shipping a product from a long way away. It gets used for 10 minutes and then thrown out. So how do we make that better? That's sort of underlying theme.
Nice. And so, it's open to the floor. I mean, who else, like going through the assessment? I know a lot of businesses, I love that description, Tash. It's kind of like a coaching, program for your business, because you do get asked a lot of questions that in other frameworks, or just questions that you wouldn't typically ponder on as a business owner. So anyone else from the floor who was kind of intrigued or shocked, or had some epiphanies when they were going through the assessment as to the types of questions you were being asked?
Tim, we've just pressed go this morning. We've just sent our second assessment in, so that went out at 11 a.m. this morning. So we've just finished the recertification. It's like, hallelujah, it's done, and look, I think for us, I got interested in it because of Alex Hannett, who's on the board of B Lab in Australia, and he said, Harv, I think you'll be really interested in this. There's some great companies and so forth, and so that's where I started. And I think, picking up on Tesh's point, is that for me, B Corp is a action, so it's about actually doing something, and we learned a lot about better business by going through the assessment, and I think it's just I think it's something that's overlooked. For me, it's more about what you can learn about your business than getting the stamp. The stamp's lovely to get, but I think it's really important to look at it as a learning tool and where to next. And so with this, we're looking to lift our mark. Our first mark was 84.5. This time I think it'll be well over 90. But let's see what they come back with. But I think it's, for us, it is a guide to actually performing our commercial business in a better way and giving us a guideline. And so just a quick example of something that we put in place, because the wonderful thing with the assessment, it tells you what they're looking for. We've put in place now a process where by a whistleblower policy. So now we have got somebody outside the business that any staff can contact if there is any bullying, any sexual misconduct, any issues, any of the staff can contact this person outside the company and report it. Now, I hope that is never ever used, obviously, but it's there. And what if we had that in place if it wasn't going through e-certification? No, we wouldn't have. But they gave us a guideline of what to do there. So that's just an example. And as going back to it, it's an action. It's not a theory-based thing. It's an action, and our business performs better because we're a B Corp, and that's why we did it.
Nice. So performance-wise, better performing across more metrics though than just the financial. I guess that's kind of I know, Steve, you're very much like, hey, look, we're a for-profit business first, but while we're doing that, we're trying to make as much good as we can. But I think that really is the whole concept behind the B Corporation. I guess concept and framework is better business for better outcomes to all stakeholders, rather than just the old world, I guess, model of for the shareholders, which is primarily what business has been based on historically. So I'm going to pick on Brian and Austin next. Because you both essentially are organizations that have an element of certification and audit in terms of the businesses that you do, and your organizations that are certifying other businesses, and you are both B corporations. So yeah, how does B Corporation fit into the I guess like the sustainable frameworks that you offer for your clients? Maybe ladies first, Austin.
Yeah, I think that was one of the things that really drove us to B Corp, was that it aligned with our own principles of, you can't manage what you're not measuring. So measure it, get it independently verified, and you know exactly what you have to work with. And it gives you that really solid baseline. And I think echoing what everyone else says, it's the questions that it makes you ask yourself. We were just going through a self-assessment yesterday with my CE and some admins, the beekeepers, and just sort of sitting there and having a chat about, oh gosh, actually this thing that we're doing is still really informal. How do we formalize that? How do we make sure that it's really locked in, so that should something change, that we can't stop the good work that we're already doing? Having an environmental business impact model to begin with as an environmental certification company, we can take a lot of things ourselves quite easily, but there's still a lot of work to be done. And I think we're quite proud of what a strong sort of score we have on the care we give to workers. Because, if you don't take care of your staff, you're not going to have a business. And so it's nice to have that recognition and that framework to evaluate the work you're doing. And then, I love that when you go through the assessment, it gives you so many great ideas, and then you can tap into the network and get more ideas about what can you practically actually do to boost your performance, to boost, to push yourself to constantly be doing better.
Nice. And how about you, Brian? Maybe give an explanation of what Kogo is all about as well.
Sure. No, thank you. Kogo is really on a mission to change the world, and I guess within B Corp space that comes up relatively regularly, more than in common business. But the idea is really to link, people out there in the public who are looking to engage and purchase things, to buy things based on their values, with businesses who are delivering in those spaces. So it's not so much that we're certifying; we're trying to simplify to the market, to people who are looking to buy and to support, the right kind of businesses, where they can go with a bit of confidence. So it's very much a platform to highlight certifications and the things that businesses are doing already. So, the reason for us to get on board with B Corp was really to walk the talk, or make sure that we're doing all the things that we should be when we're talking about how to link the public with businesses. And get that virtual cycle going. Are we actually aligned with those businesses and those good practices? And it's really it's probably the most credible framework out there that's covering all the broad topics of sustainability. So for your business, it's not that you need to go in and tick all the boxes, but you have the ability to get credit for the good things that you're doing. And in particular, the stuff around the impact business model scoring and recognition. So, for purpose-led businesses, that's really exciting, area where we can have a really good think about we're trying to deliver this impact with our business model, and are we actually, how are we measuring that? How are we delivering on that? And are we making the right kind of progress? Oh, you're on mute, Tim. Sorry.
Which is good for me. I'm cool with you being on mute.
There we go. First time running this show, kids. We're working on everything. Yeah, I think what's really interesting for me, and the thing that I really liked, so when I first met Steve, I was working for a company, and I was thinking, right, we need to be better at measuring stuff. There was some cultural challenges internally in terms of just the corporate culture. So I literally Googled, HR fix plus environmental stuff, and B Corporation came up as this model of how to measure a business across different varying different metrics. And I think it's really interesting as well that two organizations who are primarily focused on carbon, so Incogo and Toitu, you're kind of being asked to ponder and measure other topics, so your social impact, your what are you doing for your customers. And for me, that's why I think B Corporation currently is the holy grail of certification protocols, because it's relatively easy to say, well, yeah, we've got our carbon emissions under control, and maybe we're even, carbon positive, if that's the right word, or we've really got our emissions under control. But we could have child labour in our supply chain, but we're not talking about that because we want you to focus on the good we're doing over here on our environmental. Yeah. Lee, let's bring Lee in. So again, another, I guess, like environmentally focused organization, Method Recycling. I frequently see your beautifully designed bins around various locations that I'm around. So yeah, what does B Corporation certification mean to you guys?
Yeah, so for Method, obviously we're a product-based company with a really heavy focus on circularity and design. So as a both purpose and founder-based business, we started with a set of principles that have really driven Method to where they are. And obviously I've only joined in the past couple of years. But we already had some really good practices in place, but we weren't measuring them. They weren't formalized. So B Corp for us was a big part of formalizing what we did, as well as identifying things we maybe weren't seeing because they weren't directly in front of us. One of the biggest parts that came out of it for us was that we are gold standard in our office. Obviously sustainability is what we do, but we weren't thinking so much about our remote teams and how that translates to the people in Australia and the UK. So that was a big part of it for us. And one of the biggest things that come out for us is being in such a great community of people willing to help or share their expertise. The reason we finally got certified is actually going to see a talk from Sharesies, and they said, stop questioning yourself. If you've got the 80 points, hit submit. And a little bit of help from Tim as well. So for us, certifying was great. It helped us formalize a lot of things we were already doing, but for us, it's about the community of being around like-minded businesses and wanting to see ourselves alongside the Kogos and the little yellow birds and Sharesies who we admire so much, and that community that's built around it.
Fantastic. That's really, really cool. So what do you think is stopping more businesses from getting onto B Corp certification? Like open to the panel. Like what stopped you from doing it earlier? Maybe. Who wants to take that one on?
I think one of the things, just to your point about we're the world's dirtiest B Corp, one of the things that really appealed to us, and people possibly don't know enough yet, is that you don't have to be some wonderful, environmentally friendly, carbon positive business to get into it. You can be a normal sort of business and work your way through. And the great thing is with the BIA, the Business Impact Assessment, is it helps you so much. We started, I think, at 56 points was our first time when we went through it. And it was like we were toast. But with the help of the B Lab at the time in the States, we worked our way up to 80 points and we've sort of gone a bit further. And Kath from our team, who Tim has worked really hard over the last couple of recertifications to sort of edge those points up. Although I have to say they make it harder every time, which seems to be rather tough on the people, but I understand what they're doing. They're lifting us all up. So I think that's one of the things that people should understand is you don't have to be some special business. And you see companies like Brewdog, who are one of my favourite brewery out of Scotland, and they're all over the world. Yeah, enjoy a pink IPA. So those sort of mainstream sort of businesses, if you like, rather than ones that are pretty special, and some pretty special ones as well. But there's a great group, and I think that's something that people maybe don't understand. They maybe think it's for the privileged few, but it's actually one of the only certifications I think that any business could attempt. Maybe if you're drilling for oil, that could be difficult, or something like that. But apart from that, there's almost anything you could do, and that's why people like Danone, I guess, have managed to work their way into it, and other huge businesses in New Zealand as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
Brian, you want to say something there?
yeah, extra to Steve's point, I think it's great that the framework is catering for small through to large businesses. So it's not like a framework that's come out of corporate space and then like just doesn't make sense and is totally overly bureaucratic and challenging and just illogical for small businesses. So it has that scale element to it, which is a big plus. Yeah.
No, I totally agree. No, how you go?
Tim, I think initially it looked like just some smaller, I'm going to call them boutique businesses. That's not the right word, but smaller businesses, getting involved. I think we've broken through that now. That with Kathmandu and Sinlay accrediting in New Zealand, I think that's a really good sign to New Zealand. It's still, it's like trying to get anything up and going, even if it's good news, is hard to sell. If B Corp were drug dealers, that we'd get a whole lot more publicity, right? So good news is a really hard thing to sell. Maybe we could get into that, but the good thing is this isn't live and it's not going to be, nobody's going to listen to it. But I think good news is a really hard thing to sell, and so most people still don't know about B Corp. It's still a relatively new thing that is under the radar. And I think, going to Steve's point, this is not for special companies. This is for any company to take on and look at, because there is no doubt going through the certification, you will become a better business. You will make more money. Your staff will be happier. There's a whole lot of benefits come out of this. So I don't see B Corp as a feel-good thing. I see it as, I'm a practical person. I like practical things. B Corp is a practical measure that is going to lift the performance of your business. That's why we do it. And so I think more companies can look at this, regardless of the industry you're in, and go through it's all open. You can go through, measure your business, see where you're at, and go, okay, what do we need to lift? And on 56 points starting off, you'd go, wow, we'll never get there. But you have. And so I would encourage any business to look at the framework. The other thing is, there is too much wastage in the system of people lining up at the start line and not getting through. And there's too much wastage. So we've got to find a way of helping companies. And I know you're great at this, Tom, that when companies line up to the start gate and go, yeah, we want to certify, to make sure you've got enough support around you to get through, because it is hard. It's good that it's hard, and I hope it's never easy. I'm really proud we're a B Corp, because it's bloody hard to get, and that's good. So make sure you've got enough support around you that when you line up, that you've got the momentum and enough people behind you to get you through.
Definitely. And totally echo all those points. I think, it's applicable for anyone. Size doesn't kind of matter. I think you're all right. When I look back, Steve, obviously B Corp number 1. And then the first kind of 10 pretty much were all small businesses who were already doing good. So it was more a validation of the good that we're doing, rather than hey, we need to look at this assessment to understand how we could do more good. Whereas, when you've got your Sinlays and your Kathmandu, so, the two biggest by size, sort of by volume, B corporations in the Australia-New Zealand region, in New Zealand, thumbs up to us, that changes the narrative. And I'm really hopeful, because obviously, we only have an NZX 50. We don't need to get many CEOs in a room to have a conversation. Hopefully some of them might watch this, or one of their team might listen in. And, I think it's a relatively I was doing some numbers, doing the stats the other day. I know it's the kind of the classic Kiwi. Yes, but we won the most gold medals per capita. But I think it is a worthy stat to look at. And when you look at the per capita stats, I think the USA was about 0.8 B corporations per total population. Aussie was 4, and we're 8. So we're smashing it. And I think I'm hopeful because the Kiwi DNA is kind of stand up for big, challenging topics that we're passionate about. First to give women the vote globally, anti-apartheid, anti-nuclear. We've got, it's in the DNA to stand up and do what's right at scale. So I think it is. It's partly a marketing challenge, but it's a relatively new framework. And as we get more and bigger organizations, there's a really, really big B corporation that they have certified, but they haven't publicly announced yet, and it's killing me because they are going to be such an amazing addition on the top end of town.
Tim, you always do this. You're like a kid before Christmas. I mean, just it's classic.
I need to get out more.
I just want to say one other thing, that B Corps aren't perfect. Just because you're a B Corp does not make you a perfect business, right? And it's interesting. I had somebody had a swipe at me recently because of Kathmandu has been in the news around not paying their wage subsidy back to the government and being criticised for that, and said, I thought B Corp would be better as a business and so forth. And I said, look, I have no judgment around whether Kathmandu should pay it back or not. But I said the key point here is that just because you're a B Corp does not make you perfect. And it's something I think we need to be very careful of, that we don't, and I don't see it actually, Tim, within the community, but looking from outside, that people go, we're a B Corp and so we are perfect. Because that's absolute bullshit. It's not true. You're still a fallible company. You still make mistakes and trip up. And just because you've got that stamp does not make you perfect. However, for us, it makes us a lot more conscious of making sure that we have got our act together.
Yep. Very cool.
Yeah, it's about progress, right? Not perfection. That's the mantra that you hear. And it's so wonderful that, the entry level for B Corp, it is hard to get those 80 points, but it's not impossible. And it does let you enter the game at a fairly low level, and you have so much room to improve from there, it's such a nice thing that, they reward you for just doing something. And the more you do, the more they reward you.
Yeah. Totally. And I mean, to get 80 is no mean feat. I think the median score on first attempt is still somewhere around the 50 mark. So, business as usual, kind of never really given this B corporation thing a thought. Hear about it, let's give it a go. They might get to 50 on average. So getting to 80 is no mean feat. And I think for me, it's what I kind of refer to as the purpose horizon. As you start doing, if you're at 50, having taken the assessment, you've had your eyes open to a whole lot of other things that you hadn't had to think about before. That's cool. You're now aware of that. And when you've got to 80, you're then aware of, okay, well, for us to maybe get to 90 or 100, if we really, really want to go all in and really push the boat out, we now have a framework of understanding of where we need to be doing better. And so, it's interesting that we got 3, I was talking to Harv earlier on, and the 3 highest scoring B corporations in New Zealand, I'm pretty sure, are Atik, Little Yellow Bird, and the Cheer Sisters. So, consumer brands with female leaders. So Tesh, what's all that about? No pressure.
It's awesome. What can I say? we got 96.7 on our first
which is
first assessment.
First go is a really good score.
Okay, I'm out of here. I'm going home now.
I am too, I'm afraid. Sorry.
But even that's not good enough to get us in the top 3.
Tim, I'm sorry, I knew we were in the wrong call. We're in the wrong place.
Obviously, more room for us to improve. I was really impressed because I'm friends with the Cheer Sisters, Chloe and Flossie. They're awesome. And when I heard their score, which I think was like 117, I was like, wow, that's incredible. And I could genuinely appreciate the success, because I was thinking, wow, how would we have gotten those extra 20 points, So it is impressive, and it's cool as well, because it makes you aspire to do better next time. I think it's great that they have that point system. Everyone likes to win, everyone likes a little bit of that motivation of doing better and getting more points. So even though there aren't any prizes, and as of yet we don't have T-shirts, but I think you should keep getting that idea through, Tim. That one's got potential.
So if we can have a T-shirt sponsor, Anna and Steve is desperate for Brewdog to send him just one can of beer, and he'll stop going on about it.
Just a token.
It would seem a waste to post one environmentally unfriendly. So.
We'll lose points on the freight.
Yeah.
But just a quick point, and Ian, one point is I live in California, so everything's legal over here. So if there's anything you need, just let me know. I'll put it in the post for you. But one of the things, and it's probably interesting for some who have international ambitions, the B Corp was we got here 5 years ago, and it was a great entry into a market because all of a sudden you had a few friends that you could go to first. It didn't mean they were going to buy off you automatically, but you had people you could talk to and find out about a market. So if people have any sort of international ambitions, it's worth it just for that, let alone the other good things that we've already talked about.
Yeah, we're in the UK as well with our app, and staff over there have really noticed a big uptick in terms of B Corp awareness and number of businesses.
I think they just hit 500 B corporations in the UK this week, which is the UK just kind of came out of nowhere. They were pretty late to the party in terms of having a B lab established. And I remember they got to 100 within, it felt like about 6 months, and now they're at 500. It's like, wow, imagine 500 B corporations in New Zealand. I'm getting Hans like, I'll calm down, Tim, but like
that would be nearly all of New Zealand's business community.
But hey, that's my goal has always been in the back of my mind, the most number of B Corps per capita of any country, and that's my kind of where I'm aiming for.
But Tim, I think we've hit the tipping point. It's sat at about 15 or 16 for a long time, and I think there is momentum now. That there is. I think we've hit that tipping point, and I think it is really important having those two big companies in there. I think that gives it real credibility to a wider range of companies. And I know I've had a meeting with the sustainability manager of Fonterra, who have been through the assessment process, and and whether they'll have a go at it or not, but they were very aware of where their markers, and their marker was a lot higher than I was expecting because they got a huge number of points because they're a co-op. So it's interesting to see that it is starting to move. And I think, the more bigger companies come on board, I think that adds huge credibility to the movement.
Totally. And I think this is a conversation because I guess for transparency, well, not that it really matters, but I did some work for Kogo a few years ago, and we'd regularly have conversations as a team. What if someone like McDonald's wanted to come and join the platform on Kogo? So Kogo is all about, I guess, for the businesses, helping them understand marketing data insights about where potential customers are who care about systemic problems that your business could try and work to solve. So it's really, really cool tool from a business. If you're not on Kogo as a New Zealand or UK business, you should totally reach out to Josh. I'm guessing is probably the best guy. We'll tag Josh in the link somewhere, not Brian. Brian's like, no, don't email me. It's a really, really cool tool. And that was one of always the big questions as a team. And half the team would say no. Like if McDonald's rang us tomorrow and said they wanted to come on board and they wanted to work out how they could move to being 100% ethical, kind of like free range eggs and cruelty-free meat products, half the team would kind of be like, no, they don't have a mandate to exist as far as we're concerned, whereas the other half of the company were kind of like, well, we should totally get them on board, because if we convert McDonald's by 1% in terms of the more good they do, that's significantly more impact than someone starting a small business selling vegetarian burgers to try and compete against McDonald's, which is going to take them maybe 50 years to scale and be of that size. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily I think we need both to happen, but I think the big end of town is where a lot of change is going to drive. And I know, Steve, that's something you've always talked about. It's better to have these sort of bigger corporations who maybe aren't doing as good as they could in terms of social and environmental. It's better to have them on side and bring them on the journey rather than kind of throw rocks at them.
Yeah, definitely. And I think a couple of interesting stories. One of the very first retreats we went to, which I can't remember where that was, but maybe have been Oregon. But someone stood up and said B Corps should mandate living wage as part of the impact assessment. And there was a lot of division, and the founders came out, and I'm paraphrasing, so hope no one sues me, but they basically said that excludes people, and we're all about inclusion. And it's like, rather than excluding people for not doing that, which for some companies would be impossible to do overnight, especially in the States if you've got 50,000 workers, for example, but that can be an excuse as well. So how do we include people like that and help them get to those goals, as opposed to just exclude them and have them as not part of it? And the other one was one of the founders, whose name's just escaping me, in Australia. Someone asked, could a coal company be a B Corp? Because Australia is full of coal and all those other things. And he said, on the face of it, you would think not, but if their goal was to change the world of energy into something else, using that as a base, but because they know energy, so how do we move to other energies, then that's possible. And again, it's the founders have this really inclusive frame of mind, which I think is great, and it's gone right through. A lot of us in various groups say they're awful, they should be out because they sell gloves, for example, disposable gloves. Well, it's like that's all that there is at the moment, but how do we make it better until we think of something that's better for the environment or the world than a disposable glove? And we're working on that, but in the meantime, you can make a difference.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So we've got... Oh, sorry.
And from a food production perspective, we do need gloves. Hygiene's really important.
I'm not sure I've seen you on the customer list, Tish. Just saying.
I have seen manager. Tim told me about you in our last call.
Yeah.
Well, this could get ugly, Tim. Ooh.
Yeah. Would you like us all to leave the live panel so that you two can have a discussion of that? So we've got our first question from the floor. Hopefully this will work. There we go. Look at that. How cool is this? So from Rhea here, I'm going to throw this one straight to Austin, because I think this has to be in your wheelhouse. How does B Corp certification align with ISO standard ISO 26000? It seems to be similar. Correct, Rhea, if she's wrong.
I think it is similar. I don't know the 26,000 series as well as I know the 14,000 series, but it definitely does tick a lot of the same boxes. And I think that this is true of a lot of certifications, where if you have an ISO certification for your carbon footprint or your environmental management or your quality management, the work that you're doing as part of that would help you answer and prove your answers in the B Corp assessment. So if you are aligned with that full series of sustainability standards, you're probably going to be able to whiz through that B Corp assessment fairly straightforwardly. And it might help you give a few more practical ideas, though. I think the thing with ISO standards is because they're group consensus standards, they can be a little bit more of the sort of lowest common agreed point. So there's definitely room to grow. And the other thing with ISO standards is that it's essentially just sort of giving you that really base level of these are the things that you should tick off to kind of say that you have this. And the nice thing about the B Corp framework in comparison is that it goes so much further. And I mean, I think I would assume that if you actually manage to get a full number of points, B Lab would immediately start thinking, great, how can we push this further? What do we need to do differently? Because that's not good enough. There's no such thing as perfection. So yeah, I think if you're doing one of those things, it won't stop you or prevent you from doing the other. The ISO work would feed nicely into your B Corp certification and help you prove it.
Nice.
Yeah. And just extra to that, I think that from what I'm familiar with the ISO 26000 standard, that it's not a certifiable standard. So that's still got a lot of use. But if you're looking for that badge of endorsement or that third party kind of that reassurance that someone's taken a look at it, then Corp is a better place for that.
That was going to be my commentary. I think it's just a sustainability standard. Sure, I've been involved with I've been employed by two organizations as they went through ISO certification, if that's the right word, or the audit, and I know it's an intense amount of work. but if you're looking at just the one pillar of sustainability, like that's great. It's a start. But like I say, the B Corporation, because it looks at the 5 pillars. So you've got your governance, you've got your workers, you've got your social impact, your environmental impact, and then your customer or business model. You're just kind of being forced to look at a whole lot of other areas. And like I say, I think that the big risk, and I think this is probably my challenge to the big end of town, is okay, the climate thing is the big thing that a lot of organizations are kind of going for, which is, it's a thing that we need to go for, but you can't. It seems like there's enough systemic challenges facing all of us that picking one of them alone when you're at the big end of town isn't going to be enough to really help us solve the problem. So, and I think exactly what Brian said. It's a. I mean, it'd be interesting to get some feedback from the room in a second, but I think it would be a stretch to say right now that having a B Corp logo on your brand in the supermarket is massively beneficial, because it is not as well recognized currently. But I think that third-party verification, to have a stamp that is increasingly recognized globally by all stakeholders as having validity is a big thing.
Yeah. I can speak to that and say that I think maybe 1 out of every 10 customers, if that, might have any idea what a B Corp logo means. I had a meeting just yesterday with a auditor from PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC, and they're looking at setting up sustainability audits as part of the services that they offer to their very large customers. And I mentioned B Corporation certification to her, and she was like, "Oh, what is that?"
Wow.
So I don't think the recognition's really there yet.
Which is interesting, because one of the 60 tabs I have open on my Chrome browser is a report from PwC UK, B Corporations in 2020. How has COVID-19 impacted the B Corp landscape? Yeah, interesting that some of these big organizations that globally are saying, yeah, we're all on it. It hasn't quite filtered down. If they need someone to come and facilitate some sessions for them, more than happy. Hint, hint. Cool. We've got another question from the crowd. So this is from Yatin. Do you have any suggestions, recommendations for businesses before they start to go through the certification process to get the team prepared for the intense process? Yeah, Lee, maybe I'll let you have a bite of that one first.
Yeah, sure. So when we actually started the B Corp process, it was actually me and another junior staff member at the time. We decided we were going to take a stab at it and see how far we got. And I don't think there was a way to prepare for it except to not overthink it too much and really focus on the areas that matter to your business. For example, there's 5 areas, but every business has a different area that they are going to excel in or do worse in. So I think in terms of having a team that's ready to go through the process, it's about assigning roles. Potentially it's one person manages each section, or you set aside a certain amount of time each week. It's really about taking it as a project and having a timeline and being prepared for, I guess, a bit of a wait. I'm not quite sure what it's like at the moment, but when we certified, after actually applying to get certified, there was about a 3-month wait before we had to do any more work. So I think the big part about it is going into it with the intention of finishing it and making sure that there are people responsible for achieving it. Once we stopped overthinking the little details and, where do we get our pens from, things started to move a lot quicker and a lot easier for our business.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. Anyone else? Steve, Ian, you've just been through recertification. Did you do things differently from the first time round when you did your initial certification?
Yeah, we worked in teams, and we would do it in little bites. So 3 of us were involved in it, and we found actually working on Zoom worked really well, because you could bring up the questions and so forth and work through it together. Even if we were in the office together, we found that it was really good to bring it up. But I think don't give it to one person to do, because they'll just drown. It needs to be a team effort and look after each other as you go through, and there are troughs and lows, and some days are good and some aren't. So we just broke it down into our slots and said, right, we'll focus for an hour on this, and then we'd allot another piece of time. So yeah, we just became more systematic this time, and we were better prepared. We knew what we were getting in for, and it was still hard, but it was more systematic.
Nice.
If I one other thing is go and find a B Corp that has a similar business to you and reach out and ask if they're open to questions, because I don't know many B Corps that wouldn't be more than happy to sit down and have a conversation about it and help you get there, or Tim if you're in New Zealand. It's an easy way to go.
Thank you.
I'd like to claim a lot of responsibility for the recertification, Tim, but as you know, it was Kath, and she's a veteran now. She's done 2, I think, and then Francis before her, and so we've got a lot of experience. But I mean, it was really tough this time because things have moved on in the certification, and we had a lot of meetings with the Australian B Lab crew and even the US. And that's the thing. I think that it's telling people that there's a lot of support within the B Lab hierarchy, if that's the right word, and even their tools they give you help a lot as well. So it's just, it seems daunting, but it's just one step, small steps as it is, and then you can get through it. But as I say, we've got a bit of experience under our belt now, which doesn't necessarily make it easier, but it certainly makes it more structured, I guess, to Ian's point.
Yeah. And how about you, Austin? Because you're probably the biggest B corporation on the call. How does size alter? Because obviously for someone like me, it's I'd have to sit down and do the assessment. It's kind of me and my business. But when you've got teams and departments, what's the challenge there?
I think you definitely need a cross-functional team. If you have enough staff to have teams or have really discrete departments, that having people feed into the process, even if they're not leading it, but they're sort of part of the team, it makes it a lot quicker and easier to get answers. And you get a lot of that, sort of cross-pollination. You get some great ideas from different teams in different parts of the country, different offices. And we've always been really fortunate in that our chief executive has always been really passionate and part of the B Corp work that we're doing. And having that top-down direction means that you have a direct voice to your board or your, whoever your sort of executive leaders are. You have that direct voice to ensure that you have the resource needed. We have an impact team, which we set up after our first one, that looks across all of our ranges of impact. But it means, we meet fortnightly and we can just chat about different things. So if I'm walking through the assessment and I have, a question or an idea, I have a form right there. We can chat about it and we can go off and ask questions. And we have that direct voice to leadership, which I think is vital if you want to keep things moving. Resource and access to leadership.
Definitely. I think that's I guess it's increasingly common that I'm approached by kind of like a concerned citizen within a large organization who has come across B Corporation at some level. And it's like, hey, I really want to, I think this is amazing. This is what we need as an organization. But if you don't have that C-level or at least senior leadership team buy-in, it's just impossible. But it's definitely the advice I give to organizations is create what, the B team or a team of beekeepers. I know Steve or Kath's role in Eagle is the beekeeper. And it's a kind of a well, documented name that people or moniker that people are given in B Corporation. So having one person who's kind of leading the assessment, who is sort of the font of all truth and maybe is the person who enters the information for consistency. But it's a really... it's a really useful tool if you bring the team on the journey. It's a massive employee engagement tool as well, because you're getting people to identify which of the 5 pillars actually do they find some meaning in at work, and I guess it's a signal to the team, the broader team, the organization. Hey, we want to go on a journey to do more good in the world, and no one really gets upset or distressed at the idea of doing more good in their life. So that's the big advice I give to people is use this as a tool, not just to measure the good that you're doing, but to bring the team and potentially also your supply chain and your customers on that journey. And I think the B Corporation, oddly enough, the one that I think nailed it the best to date is Synlait, who are, Big Dirty Dairy, but because it took them 2 years to get 80 points, they had to bring the whole team on the journey to bring them all behind it. And it's like, you guys need to go and find 2 points for us in your team. Work on it. Come tell us, how do we get these 2 points? So, yeah.
Tim, we had a delightful situation when we were going through with our first assessment. And in our office, we've got Karen who runs our office, and we were going through the assessment, and she cottoned on to this whole process and got really enthusiastic. But she climbed up had a look in the ceiling one day in our offices to find that our offices weren't insulated. We'd never looked, right? We're just renting the space and not insulated. She gets on the phone, she rings our landlord and says, offices uninsulated. He goes, yeah, no, I know that. And he says, well, you need to insulate them. And he goes, well, no, it's not in the contract. And he said, no, we're about to certify as a B Corp. And if we're going to stay here, you've got to insulate the offices. And he's like, what? And she goes, we can't possibly stay in uninsulated offices. We'll pay half of it. And anyway, next thing the offices were insulated. But it was lovely to see that call to action, being more conscious and go, what am I going to do about it? And I think that's a really important spin-off that can have in the team, that everybody's got to be involved in it and not just a group. And yeah, it's about changing actions.
Fantastic. And I think that, again, that's something that I really like about it, is because it tells you, you ask the question, are you doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or one, however, it's like, oh, we're doing this, but never knew that was a thing. Okay, now I know that's a thing. And I think particularly for the small to medium business, which is owner operator or CEO, someone like Steve, who's hands-on in the business, it's easy for Steve as more so than a Synlay or a publicly listed company to go, yeah, sure, we'll have that as a policy now, or yeah, now that I know that's a thing, let's just make that happen, or as Star Trek would say, make it so. If you're wondering what's on Steve's shoulder, it's Spock, who I'm not sure, do you love Spock more than Brewdog beer, or is it, if they had a Spock-based beer, you'd be.
So that's not a logical comment at all, Tim. Now he's my voice of reason, so that's why he's sitting there helping me. But I guess if I can, I was just thinking I was going to put a question in, but I'm not sure how to do it, so I'll just say it. But one of the things we get over here is the greenwashing or enviro washing, or the washing, and there's a lot of companies in the States that, as you probably know, in New Zealand as well, that make all sorts of outrageous claims that are absolutely false, or at least very thin. And I think the B Corp gives you some security over that, and that people who know B Corp or the B Lab assessment know that it's really, it's tough. You can't sort of get away with that. But I just wonder what I'd be interested to know what the other guys think in terms of, is that being portrayed enough by B Lab or by B Corps, that how rigorous this is? Because we could go out and get a 1% for the planet sticker to put on our boxes, and zero waste, sort of, all these different things you can just go out and get, but you have to actually earn the B Corp certification, and that's, to me, really important. But I'm not sure people understand that as well as they could, and whether that's our job or B Labs or everybody's, I'm not really sure how that works.
Don't all go at once. Lee's in. Go.
I think that's one of the big things about B Corp and knowing what B Corp's all about, is these big businesses we've talked about wanting to get on board. The McDonald's, the Pepsi's, I've gone very American, but they could make a lot of substantial changes just by swapping some of their providers to B Corps. A substantial amount of B Corps actually report on their impact, and such as Etek or Little Yellow Bird, just making those swaps can actually increase both their points and their impact on the world, as well as giving them validation that even if they've not got the B Corp certification, they can say, we are working with good people who are doing the innovation so that we can keep doing what we do and make a profit. And I think that's a big part of it. I don't think there was any way we could have got through the B Corp certification without being honest and open about our practices. And yeah, I think it's a really good tool for trying to hide from greenwashing and outrageous claims, because once you're responsible to a group of people that care so deeply, it's nearly impossible to get away with it, nor would you want to.
Great answer. How about you, Brian? You're obviously, Kogo is kind of all about creating change in the business world. How do you see all that?
Yeah, it's a bit of a balance, really, because if B Corp is going out and projecting that it's very robust and very complicated and a big framework and everything, then we're kind of maybe putting off some of the businesses coming in. And I don't mean to keep it a secret, as such, but yeah, there's a role for kind of getting this certification, getting the logo out there and recognition up. But then, that's to an extent back on the businesses that have gone through the process, and having the confidence that they've gone through that and that it means something, and that they then can communicate that really confidently. And I think it is growing, and those big businesses have had a bit of a part to play in that as well. But there's a lot more to do, I think, in terms of blowing our own trumpets a bit and getting the message out there as much as possible.
Definitely, I think because there's two things that I see there. I think being an imported Kiwi, looking into New Zealand with the objectivity of a foreigner's kind of lens, Kiwis are quite humble people, and then businesses that are generally doing good, for some reason are your guess is typically more humble. So there's kind of double layer of humbleness around. Well, we're just doing the right thing. Didn't think we have to shout about it. But I do think what we sort of said earlier on. People need good news stories. I think people want to see business that is actually doing some good. So maybe there is a role for the media to be, rather than just sort of the 2 minutes at the end of the news. Oh, here's our good sort, who's picked up some litter on their street. But that's tough because if it bleeds, it leads. That's what that sector's all about, I guess. Yeah, I guess we're also getting to, like we said a couple of times, we're getting to that critical mass as a movement now in New Zealand. And there's a couple of B corporations who I have seen with adverts on TV, but I haven't seen their B Corp logo on there, which is, that's interesting. Why not? It theoretically is a unique advantage. The big B corporation that has just certified, that I can't name, is in a industry that needs to increasingly show trust and accountability. So I really do hope that they will be leading on the front foot with their logo on everything and educating people. But maybe now we're getting to a critical mass. It's something that we should be looking at as a community. Is I don't know, how much does it cost to put an ad on TV? Let's all put in $50 and I don't know, get on Choice TV at 3 a.m. in the morning and have one ad play for 30 seconds. But it's a start.
I think there's a role to play there, Tim, with the impact that we're measuring through the B Corp certification process. It's really, I think, powerful, and that's something that Kogo we try to communicate and try to get businesses thinking more about when they're coming onto the platform. Is that you can be managing things, but what's the output? What's the kind of the impact that's being delivered? And that I think resonates pretty powerfully if it's communicated in the right way.
Yep. I mean, it's an interesting I guess setup, the community. So we have all these beautiful humans on this panel their businesses are certified B corporations, and we have B Lab, which is a global network of not for profit centers whose job is to partly run the certification program. So they have the auditors and the verification standards committees and what have you, but they're also responsible for building the movement. So interacting, creating events and so on and so forth. But I guess this is the big challenge in sort of how do we grow the movement is, B Lab is a small not-for-profit that is not, awash with thousands or even hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. Most of the B corporations on this call, we're all relatively small in terms of a global scale. How do we perhaps work better with B Labs or other groups to get the word out there to more people? Harv, what do you reckon?
One of the things that we are using more and more is that when we use a lot of conference centres and rooms and so forth, and we will ask them and challenge them on some of their policies and so forth. And at times you can see them, why are you asking these questions, right? And so we're trying to raise the profile and say we're a B Corp and this is really important to us. So even with our bank, we challenge them because we bank with one of the bigger banks, and we don't get any points because we bank with them, but we challenge them all the time on stuff. So I think it's important for us to push back to other people that we do business with and ask them to lift their game. And just on the B Lab thing, Tim, I think it's really important that we have recently pushed something back to B Lab and said, look, we are working on how we lift our cultural intelligence within collective intelligence. And we're looking at putting a framework together to start integrating more Indigenous practices, using more Maori culture, our more Maori values within our framework. And that fits in beautifully with B Corp. But I think that New Zealand has got a role here that we could lead other countries, because I think of our relationship with Maori is more dynamic than a lot of other countries and their Indigenous people. And I am really passionate about how we introduce that more and more into business practices. And so I've pushed that back to B Lab and said we're working on this, and we'll be coming back to you with some ideas of how this can be integrated into the assessment, because I think it's a really important signal going forward and a really important practice. And so far they've said, yep, cool, keen to see what you're working on. So I also think, it's important for us to also make sure that we are having a say in the way that the assessment is developed going forward, and don't just sit there passively being catered to from wherever, America, or that we have influence back, and start asking for things that are important to us.
Nice. I think it's definitely getting better since, I think year one, when it was pretty hard to even get a hold of anyone at B Lab. Steve had to go to San Francisco.
It's getting better.
I guess to your point, it's there's 50 B Corps, and I don't know what that adds up to in revenue for B Lab. It's probably not a lot, so they haven't got a lot to play with. But I think we need to, as a group, maybe work with some. It would be great to get some very retail type people, even if they're not B Corps, but maybe would assist in promoting it. I know the various supermarkets over here have had B Corp events, and the retailers have got on board with that. So that, and then, they get the front of the row or something. So I don't know how that happens, but that's one, get it in front of the people so that they can actually see it.
I think that's the big missing link at the minute, is getting that recognition so that consumers know that they have an option. If there's two brands that I can support, or there's two businesses that I can work with, this one is a better business, which is, I guess, the better business is B Corp. That's what it's all about. Yeah. Any other thoughts on that?
One thing that we're doing, it's just a small action, I guess, is we've set up for Kogo in Wellington, where headquarters is based, a Tech for Good recurring event, so every month or 2 months, and we're trying to bring together different businesses, different speakers, and mostly tech industry, but it doesn't have to be just to, and then invite the tech industry participants in to kind of build that awareness around what's possible and what cool kind of activities and actions and things can be driven in this space. Because, in our experience, there's a few that are quite engaged in the space, but there's a lot that kind of see it as, as a technical focus side to the business, and the impact of that is a little bit disconnected. So that's something that we're trying to nudge along, and that's probably coming out of our background as a B Corp, wanting to grow the movement.
Nice. I think that's kind of always been one of the challenges with a small community of small businesses, where people are just busy trying to run their business and do as much good as they can. Again, Steve and Eagle have taken on a large amount of that sort of heavy lifting in Christchurch, running events and sponsoring and getting people out to see their factory and come and see what a B Corporation is actually all about. So I think that's getting better as we're getting this critical mass of more organisations in Auckland, Wellington. Obviously, we've got Raglan representing. There's another B Corporation coming in Raglan soon. Watch this space. You have your own little hub there of awesomeness, and Harv just doing his own thing in Palmy. But we'll get there.
And Fielding. I'll have you know.
Sorry.
There's a difference.
Does anyone know?
One thing
you said you're going to be nice.
Oh.
Sorry, I'll mute him, Tash. Don't worry.
One thing we're doing at the moment to help promote B Corp is a giveaway. So we teamed up with all the other food certified B Corps in New Zealand, so Fix and Fog Peanut Butter and Cheer Sisters and People's Coffee. So we've made a B Corp breakfast giveaway that we're running on our Facebook and our Instagram at the moment. And that's just a nice way to kind of reach people with a bit of a story about what B Corp is, and then there's a prize they can win, and they can tag their friends and share the giveaway. So really simple, but it's a nice storytelling method, and people tend to engage with giveaways maybe more than they do with just sort of informational posts.
Nice. That's super cool. Yeah, and I think this is, again, we're just getting to that size now where we've got enough organizations in tech, in food, in sustainability, in the different areas where we can start doing some of that cool stuff. Yeah, super cool.
I think
I know you go.
Sorry, and it's as much about the retail side of things and educating individuals on it as it is institutional. So I've had a few conversations about how do we make a government aware of what B Corps are doing so that they can put into their procurement policies that if a company is B Corp, they're a preferred vendor, or and how that could help grow the industry. Even if they're just asking companies, oh, are you a B Corp? It could actually inspire change. And how do we make big institutional change with the people that have the power of purchase?
Definitely. That's a conversation that I know I've had locally here with different authorities is, it's a headache for you to screen, actually, are people doing good as a business? Well, if they're a certified B Corporation, they have met a global verified standard of transparency and accountability and social and environmental impact. So that, that's an easy mechanism for you just to go, yep, you're through the first round of some screening on that basis. But obviously you need to be able to provide the goods, services, operations as per the RFP, whatever. But it's an interesting thing because there's been a couple of really big companies that I've had conversations with in the last couple of weeks, where it's their procurement team that have come to me because they are increasingly being asked in tenders through other large organizations, question one, what is your social impact that you've had in the last 12 months? And they kind of go, well, we know we've done some good stuff, but we haven't documented it. We have no verification of it. And so, I think procurement can play a really, really big role. Particularly for some of those bigger companies who might not be ready, or it might take them a couple of years, like a Synlait, to actually go through the process because they have to make some big changes. But go and find some B corporations in your supply chain, support them. So, B Corp is better business. Are we all agreed on that?
Okay. Of course. Of course, it's just on procurement's tough. San Francisco, and it might have changed, but San Francisco County or whatever they're called, council, offer 3% head start for B Corps on major RFP and tenders. And I've always sort of been on the fence about that. I'm not sure people should be given a head start, but it's one way of them doing exactly what you're saying, is filling in the first part of the sheet, that what's your impact. So I think that's an option for some people. I think big companies, and I can name a few in New Zealand that we've dealt with over the years, are scared of that because it's all they see is price increase, and that's not necessarily the case. We've always said that our products may be slightly more per piece, but they're always cheaper per month, and we've got lots of documentation on that now. So it's an interesting one, and procurement is interesting. Often it's a person in a room with no windows and a spreadsheet, and so he hasn't got a lot of view of the world, or she. So it's a difficult place to start. And then you often get the person at the top saying, yes, let's do it, but then it doesn't trickle down to the procurement. So it's a tricky one. I was going to say, though, Tim, one way to get the word across, I've always had this thought that we should hold a B-estival, B''estival. And New Zealand's now the only place in the world that you can gather publicly anyway. So maybe we should put together, have some nice food, import some bands from overseas. They've got nothing to do anyway. And some music and Brewdog, of course, and various beers and wines from New Zealand, and really raise the profile. And I think you'd be good at organising that. I've just got a feeling.
Because I've got nothing else to do this week.
No,
I like it. With the food and booze, with hopefully Sawmill might turn up as our local preferred beer supplier. We've clearly got some great coconut-based products we'll be getting. We've got the recycling bins sorted.
It's all done.
Harv's got a team of facilitators, so we could run some events.
Yep.
Austin can make us carbon neutral, and Brian can help bring a whole lot of businesses. Let's make it happen. Yeah, why not? So what does the future look like for B Corporation in New Zealand? Who wants to take that one?
I'll jump in. I think it looks really bright. To be honest, and when you look at what's going on in New Zealand at the moment, and sure that there's impacts from COVID, and that's going to continue for quite some time, even though it could be indirect with supply chain or customers offshore. There's really, you see movement and growing interest like right across society, in terms of sustainability and people being more aware of the importance of these things, and businesses that are doing meaningful work in that space. So the public, you've seen stuff around climate with Extinction Rebellion, protests, you've got government taking action, in a number of areas, even so stuff around, product stewardship and circularity, not just climate, and on some social issues too. You're seeing, some local councils or local government getting a bit more engaged, more big businesses taking action. So it feels really broad, and that's just going to grow, I think, the interest in B Corp, because it's a certification third party, and everybody's increasingly, I think, recognize the value of that. If there's solutions ready to go, businesses already positioned, then that's, say for a procurement perspective, that's a quick win or an easy decision. Doing all this assessment is on your own is really hard, going through that process.
Nice. Anyone else? What does the future look like? Do we think we'll get to a point where, Steve might be able to talk to this a little bit, because in the US, your US business is a PBC, that's correct, isn't it? You're a public benefit corporation, so it's kind of almost like a B corporation off the shelf. Is the future in New Zealand that when you go to government or business.govt to register your business, is social and environmental impact the two other pillars that your business is going to be measured against, as well as are you running solvently?
Yeah, the PBC system, which I think in a few countries now around the world or similar, is really a public benefit statement that you'll run the business in accordance with what you say. And it's a wee bit like a sticker. It's a good entry point for people to get into a community. But I think it's the B Corp thing is going to be, if you're not in it, then you're out of it, and so it's, you'll miss out on things, and it's certainly gaining strength here as well, in a big way. But I think the real growth has been in Europe and maybe Australasia. I don't know the numbers, you might, Tim. And so it's going to be one of those things where people will start saying, what is this, and why is it growing so much, and why do people care? And the answer I always give is it's the way business was designed. You're part of a community, whether it's global or Ashburton, and as a business, you contributed to the community. You sponsored the local baseball, to be an American team, and all those sort of things, and you just contributed, and you're just good people. So it's really simple. I realise there's a lot more to it now with everything and the complexity of business, but it's just, to me, it's the simplest thing. It's getting back to what business was always designed to be, just a really good part of a community.
Love it. 100% right. Yeah, the analogy I often use when I'm talking to people about sort of purpose and doing good is, if you think back to 1,000 years or 2,000 years when you were sitting around a campfire as a tribe, if one of your tribe members is coming in and pouring the dinner on the campfire and kicking the shelters down, it's not long before that person's asked to leave the tribe. And it just seems increasingly we're recognizing some of the activity that some organizations are doing is, do you know what, actually you're not kind of contributing to the tribe so much here, so could you stop doing that? Well, look, we're an hour 12 in. I think we've covered a lot of space here. You're all very busy humans, clearly trying to change the world and make the world a better place. Final thoughts, maybe just one final thought from each of you. Maybe who wants to go first? Either just go or I'll pick on someone. Harv. Oh, I'll unmute you.
Tim, keep up the good work. Keep up the good work. You've had a huge impact on New Zealand and keeping the thing going. I absolutely agree with what Steve said. It is the future of B Corp. I think commerce is not going to go away. So regardless what changes, commerce is not going to go away. We just need to get better at conducting commerce.
Nice. Anyone else?
For anyone out there who's listening and thinking, oh, should we go through this process? Do we want to sign up, become a B Corp? I would just say don't wait to start, because the process does take a long time. So don't sort of wait until you think, I've got everything sorted, we're doing everything right, and we'll become a B Corp now. I think just start, the earlier the better, and it might take a year, might take 2 years, but at least you'll be on the journey.
What's the Steve will probably know the quote, but the Warren Miller, the ski guy, if you don't do it today, you'll be a day older when you do it. It's not going to get any easier if you start. Yeah.
What I like is about, the second best time to plant a tree is now. The first best time was 20 years ago, and so it's like you've just got to start. But I think the other thing is that, and to Ian's point, business has always been, I guess business and wars, unfortunately, have always been times, and maybe pandemics, so now there's 3, have been times of great change and advancement. And it's business that, you know, you look at some of these guys with their like or loathe them, but the Elon Musks of this world have made considerable strides just by thinking differently. And obviously Steve Jobs was a thinking differently person. And it's just, that's where business has to lead, but they have to do it responsibly. And I think that's the call from the general public, which is slowly gaining in volume in terms of people listening. Companies, because of social media, I guess, which is the curse that is, but because of, sorry, we're on social media, aren't we? Am I still here? And so it's like you can expose companies for their bad and good practices really quickly. And so that has helped. And I think it's accelerating. So that's the exciting part for us. And I'm hoping, you know, that we'll live to see the day where it's just a standard and anything else gets called out quickly.
Nice. Anyone else? Final comments before we close up shop?
Yeah, I'd say we've said it's pretty daunting. It's a pretty hard thing to do. We won't lie about that. But there's lots of resources in the community from the B Lab, and you know, just make a start on the impact assessment with some intent, and I'm sure that you'll get there.
Pretty much. Austin?
Yeah, I think just get started. You know, it might take you a few years before you can hit those 80 points, but that doesn't matter because you're doing really good work to get there. Yeah, just get started. That's how we're going to have that sort of just transition to the world that we want to live in.
Nice.
Yeah, and just to add to everyone's comments, I think it's just, you know, it's just about exploring, getting into the assessment. All the information's in there. You can play around, you know, you can read up, you can get in contact with Tim or other B Corps. You know, like you don't have to load everything up at the front and then get daunted by having how you're going to jump in. You know, like you can start off easy and just explore, and when you're ready, you jump in.
Boom, love it. Steve, one of your employees is, you know, clearly malingering on social media here. You know, if you need to jump off and have a chat with them, you know.
I know it's against company policy. I'm sure we've got a social media policy, so I'm not sure what she must be on leave. That. Hi, Kath.
big shout out to Kath. Kath is my partner in crime in the Christchurch region. We are the co-chairs of Be Local. We've been a bit rubbish on organising events, but if you're in any of the regions, if you want to get connected with any of the B corporations, you can see all the people on the call here. As Kath said, you can go to bcorporation.com.au. Find me on the internet. If you can't find me on the internet's broken, but I'll connect you. We'll make stuff happen. I'll put some links to some other resources around B Corporation. But yeah, I think general consensus seems to be that B Corp is better business, and don't wait. Go and give it a go. Have a go at the assessment. It's free to take the assessment. You only pay if you want to get verified and certified. Go do it. You'll create a better business. Thank you all so much for giving us some of your time to help try and grow this movement and spread some good stories and some cool stuff. Yeah, let's do it again sometime.
Thanks,
maybe. You're all right.
Keep it going.
Thank you.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, guys. I'll I
Cheers.
don't know how this works. I can remove you, or you can remove yourselves. There we go. There we go. I'll kick you all out. See you later. Hey, so thank you for tuning in. If you've been watching this live or watching on the replay, look, I hope that was of some value for you. This is a new thing that I'm wanting to try to help bring a bit more purpose to help those of you who want to go in pursuit of purpose, find this purposeful performance. So yeah, if there's other B corporations that you'd like me to interview, or other topics or ideas that that you want to explore on purpose, let me know. Put them a comment, or you can drop me a note to tim@growgood.co. If you can't find me, the internet is broken. So yeah, thank you so much for tuning in. Catch you soon on the next one. Peace out.